Hi, this is Kendall Boyson, professional life and recovery coach, and you're listening to Encouragementology, the practice of instilling hope. Hi there. Thanks for joining me. On this show, we are weighing the convenience versus the connection to find an optimal balance. Sacrificing one seems like taking a step back in time, but limiting the other is detrimental to your health. People need people. I could break out into song here, but just trust me. A more recent review of 148 studies concluded that on average, having stronger social ties increased the likelihood of an individual's overall survival by as much as 50%. You might be a self-proclaimed loner or someone who would rather observe life from afar, but the fact is, we need people for emotional support, companionship, and a sense of belonging. Relationships with others provide comfort during challenging times, joy during celebrations, and a feeling of connection that enriches life. Additionally, interactions with others offer opportunities for personal growth, learning, and the development of empathy and understanding. Modern times have really changed the way we interact with others, both personally and professionally. But has the convenience come at a cost? I say yes, but now I have to convince you. I'm not suggesting we go back to the turn of the century and remove all technology from our houses, but I am hoping that you will strive for a healthy balance once you fully understand the pros and the cons. Deal? Oh, I have tons of friends. We talk all the time. In fact, we text all day long and play games and share snaps and like each other's stuff. Yeah, I'm really popular. Sound familiar? Well, Leora Lawton, lecturer in demography and sociology, shared these reasons why digital life is likely to be mostly harmful. The long-term effects of children growing up with screen time are not well understood, but early signs are not encouraging. Poor attention spans, anxiety, depression, and lack in personal social connections are some of the correlations already seen, as well as the small number of teens who become addicts and non-functioning adults. I found these alarming statistics from Pew Research. I think we all know that technology, where it offers so many different aspects for communication, is really severing that impersonal and crucial social connectedness. What does it say about digital deficits? People's cognitive capabilities will be challenged in multiple ways, including their capacity for analytical thinking, memory, focus, creativity, reflection, and mental resilience. Is any of that hitting home? Nikki Graves is an associate professor at Emory University. She said, "We currently live in a culture that fosters attention deficit disorder because of hyperconnectivity. I've been teaching at the college level since 1993, and I can see a definite decline in students' ability to focus on details and in general. Additionally, I believe that the research on the relationship between hyperconnectivity and this has merit. I, for one, know that I overuse the tab, and I also overuse spell check. It's so difficult to stay focused and just try to think on my own." Have you heard about digital addiction? Internet businesses are organized around dopamine dosing tools designed to hook the public. Kate Thomas is a writer-editor based in North America. She wrote, "Unfortunately, major social media corporations have discovered that anger and insecurity keep people glued to their screens. As long as profit is more important than people, digital life will only grow more destructive." What about digital distrust and divisiveness? Personal agency will be reduced and emotions such as shock, fear, indignation, and outrage will be further weaponized online, driving divisions and doubts. Do you believe that? Remember, I found all this information at Pew Research. People spend too much time online, often devouring fake and biased items. They grow hateful of each other rather than closer in understanding. That came from an anonymous respondent. But I think we can all agree. There is also such a thing as digital duress. Information overload, plus declines in trust and face-to-face skills, plus poor interface design equals rising stress, anxiety, depression, inactivity, and sleeplessness. Susan Price, lead experience strategist at USAA, commented, "Mental health problems are rising and workplace productivity is falling. The tendency to engage with digital content and people not present instead of people in our immediate presence is growing, and small screen trance has become an accepted interpersonal norm in the workplace. Culturally induced attention deficit behavior has already reached staggering proportions and is still rising. The many serotonin payoffs we get when connecting in this way are mildly, insidiously addictive and are squeezing out the more uneven, effortful, problematic real social connections we need for true productivity and intimacy." So what are the digital dangers? The structure of the internet and pace of digital change invite ever-evolving threats to human interaction, security, democracy, jobs, and privacy. An anonymous, longtime leader of research at one of the top 5 global technology companies said, "I chose my career believing that technology would improve our lives. Seeing what has happened, I've grown pessimistic. Our species has lived for millions of years in small communities, bands, tribes, extended families. We're wired to feel valued and good about ourselves through direct, repeated interactions in such groups. These tight-knit associations are disappearing as our activity moves online. Relationships are replaced by transactions. If we avoid catastrophe, in the long run, natural selection will produce a new kind of human being that is adapted for the world we are creating. That individual will not be like most of us. Living through the transition will be painful." Is it time to take this digital world seriously? I realize it's super convenient, and I'm basically exploring this for my own addictions and not just passing that on to you. Where can we evaluate how we connect, and where can we make some changes? Gareth Cook answers why we are wired to connect at scientificamerican.com. When we experience social pain, a snub, a cruel word, the feeling is as real as physical pain. That finding is among those in a new book, Social, and it is part of scientist Matthew Lieberman's case that our need to connect is as fundamental as our need for food and water. He answered questions from Mind Matters editor Gareth Cook. You argue that our need to connect socially is powerful, but just how powerful is it? Lieberman said, different cultures have different beliefs on how important social connection and interdependence are in our lives. In the West, we like to think of ourselves as relatively immune to sway of those around us, while we each pursue our personal destiny. But I think this is a story we like to tell ourselves rather than what really happens. Across many studies of mammals, from the smallest rodent all the way to us humans, the data suggests that we are profoundly shaped by our social environment, and that we suffer greatly when our social bonds are threatened or severed. When this happens in childhood, it can lead to long-term health and educational problems. We may not like the fact that we are wired such that our well-being depends on our connections with others, but the facts are facts. What is the connection between physical pain and social pain? Why is this insight important? Lieberman said, Languages around the world use pain language to express social pain. She broke my heart. He hurt my feelings. But this could have all just have been a metaphor. As it turns out, it's more than a metaphor. Social pain is real pain. With respect to understanding human nature, I find this finding pretty significant. The things that cause us to feel pain are things that are evolutionarily recognized as threats to our survival, and the existence of social pain is a sign that evolution has treated social connection like a necessity, not a luxury. It also alters our motivational landscape. We tend to assume that people's behavior is narrowly self-interested, focused on getting more material benefits for themselves and avoiding physical threats and the exertion of effort. But because of how social pain and pleasure are wired in our operating system, these are motivational ends in and of themselves. We don't focus on being connected solely in order to extract money and other resources from people. Being connected needs no ulterior motive. This has major consequences for how we think about structuring our organizations and institutions. At businesses worldwide, pay for performance is just about the only incentive used to motivate employees. However, praise and an environment free from social threats are also powerful motivators. Because social pain and pleasure haven't been a part of our theory of who we are, we tend not to use these social motivators as much as we could. You devote a section of your book to what you call mind reading. What do you mean by this, and why do you see it as so essential? Lieberman said, "First off, I'm not referring to the ESP kind of mind reading. I mean the everyday variety that each of us use in most social interactions. We have a profound proclivity towards trying to understand the thoughts and feelings bouncing around inside the skulls of people we interact with, characters on television, and even animated shapes moving around a computer screen. Although we are far from perfect at gleaning the actual mental states of others, the fact that we can do this at all gives us an unparalleled ability to cooperate and collaborate with others, using their goals to help drive our own behavior. The funny thing is that thinking about others' thoughts doesn't feel particularly different from most kinds of analytical thinking we do. Yet fMRI research shows that there are two distinct networks that support social and non-social thinking, and that as one network increases its activity, the other tends to quiet down, kind of like a neural seesaw. Here's the really fascinating thing. Whenever we finish doing some kind of non-social thinking, the network for social thinking comes back on like a reflex, almost instantly. Why would the brain be set up to do this? We've recently found that this reflex prepares us to walk into the next moment of our lives focused on the minds behind the actions that we see from others. Evolution has placed a bet that the best thing for our brain to do in any spare moment is to get ready to see the world socially. I think that makes a major statement about the extent to which we're built to be social creatures. One of the long-standing mysteries of psychology is the question of where the self comes from and what the self even means. Does your research shed any light on this question? Lieberman said, social psychologists have long speculated that the self is a much more social phenomenon than it intuitively feels like from the inside. There have certainly been studies over the years that are consistent with this idea. However, neuroscience is bringing new data to bear that speaks directly to this idea. There's a region of the brain called medial prefrontal cortex that essentially sits between our eyes. This region has been shown again and again to be activated the more a person is reflecting on themselves. It's the region that most clearly and unambiguously is associated with self-processing. If you think about your favorite flavor of ice cream, precious personal memories, or consider aspects of your personality. Are you generous? Are you messy? You are likely to recruit this brain region. Given that we tend to think of the self as a thing that separates us from others, that allows us to know how we are different and how to walk our own path. It would be surprising if this same medial prefrontal region was involved in allowing the beliefs of others to influence our own. But this is exactly what we've seen in several studies. The more active the medial prefrontal region is, the more someone is trying to persuade you to do something, like to wear sunscreen every day. The more likely you'll be to change your tune and start using sunscreen regularly. Rather than being a hermetically sealed vault that separates us from others, our research suggests that the self is more of a Trojan horse, letting in the beliefs of others under the cover of darkness and without us realizing it. This socially influenced self helps to ensure that we'll have the same kind of beliefs and values as those of the people around us, and this is a great catalyst for social harmony. What does this research tell us about how we should be raising our children, and what does it mean for education? Lieberman said, I think the most important thing is to educate our children about what we're learning about the true role of social nature in our happiness and success in life. Intellectually, I know all about these things, but if we don't learn them as children, I'm not sure they ever really get into our guts and guide our intuitive decision-making. I think kids would love learning about how the social world works and how their brain makes that possible. The research on the social brain also leads to direct policy implications for education. The data is clear. Children learn better when they learn in order to teach someone else, rather than learn in order to take a test. Learning to teach someone else is pro-social and relies on the social networks of the brain. We had no idea these networks could promote memory, but now we do. Adriana Rodriguez from USA Today discusses how Americans are lonely and it's killing them. America has a new epidemic. It can't be treated using traditional therapies, even though it has debilitating and even deadly consequences. The problem seeping in at the corners of our communities is loneliness. And U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy is hoping to generate awareness and offer remedies before it claims more lives. Most of us probably think of loneliness as just a bad feeling. It turns out that loneliness has far greater implications for our health when we struggle with a sense of social disconnection, being lonely or isolated. Loneliness is detrimental to mental and physical health, experts say, leading to an increased risk of heart disease, dementia, stroke, and premature death. As researchers track record levels of self-reported loneliness, public health leaders are banding together to develop a public health framework to address the epidemic. The world is becoming lonelier, and there's some very, very worrisome consequences, said Dr. Jeremy Noble, founder of the Foundation for Art and Healing, a nonprofit that addresses public health concerns through creative expression, which launched an initiative called Project Unlonely. It won't just make you miserable, but loneliness will kill you, and that's why it's a crisis, said Dr. Noble. Loneliness occurs when the connections a person needs in life are greater than the connections they have. Because it's so subjective, not everyone feels loneliness the same way or for the same reason. Noble argues in his book, Project Unlonely, Healing Our Crisis for Disconnection. There are 3 types of loneliness: psychological, social, and existential. Some may experience psychological loneliness when they don't feel like they have anyone to confide in or trust. Societal loneliness is feeling systematically excluded because of a characteristic including gender, race, or disability. Existential or spiritual loneliness comes from feeling disconnected from oneself. People can have all of these loneliness types at the same time, said Noble, who is on the faculty at Harvard Medical School and Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Loneliness is experienced throughout a person's lifespan, and it can spiral as a result of trauma, illness, and the effects of aging. It can also be exacerbated by technology, taking the place of human interaction, which helps explain why young people report the highest rates of loneliness. A Harvard study conducted in 2020 found that 61% of adults from 18 to 25 reported feeling serious loneliness, compared to 39% across the general population. Other populations that report a high prevalence of loneliness and isolation include people with poor physical and mental health, disabilities, financial insecurity, those who live alone, single parents, and older populations. This is why it's so complicated when you try to address loneliness as a population health topic, because it's so varied based on the circumstances individuals have to navigate. Loneliness is by no means new to the human experience, but experts say it has worsened in recent years. As the American population becomes older and sicker with chronic diseases, the loneliness numbers have increased. Modern conveniences have also caused loneliness to expand dramatically across the population, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. Data from the University of Michigan's National Poll on Healthy Aging showed loneliness among 50 to 80-year-olds had increased from 27% in October of 2018 to 56% in June of 2020 at the height of the pandemic-era restrictions. Self-reported feelings of loneliness decreased to 34% in January 2023. And although the problem is not as severe as it was during the pandemic, it remains elevated compared to before the pandemic. COVID-19 prompted a boom in delivery services and Zoom meetings, which sustained society, schools, and workplaces after restrictions on social distancing lifted. As a result, there are fewer opportunities for Americans to interact in person and build social connections. We have to be intentional about building social connections in our life. People are also more likely to change jobs or move around the country due to the rise in remote work, which can disrupt meaningful connections. Social media has accelerated loneliness, as research shows. Feeling lonely is more common among heavy users of these sites. Although likes and followers may make a person feel good at the moment, they don't foster genuine connectedness with other people. The Harvard study found that 43% of young adults reported increases in loneliness since the outbreak of the pandemic. About half reported that no one in the past few weeks had taken more than just a few minutes to ask how they were doing in a way that made them feel like the person genuinely cared. You can be surrounded by lots of people, and you can have lots of followers or connections on social media, but not necessarily feel like you've got somebody who knows you or shows up when you're in a crisis. There's another reason experts are honing in on loneliness as a growing problem. It can harm a person's mental and physical health, making it a lethal combination. Tackling this massive problem would mean addressing the greatest preventable risk factor of mental health challenges like depression, anxiety, addiction, suicide, and self-harm. Noble notes, he noted that all of these mental health conditions can be triggered by and also exacerbate feelings of loneliness. There's a bidirectional relationship, and that's what's causing spiraling, said Noble. Spiraling is a downward cascade of negative thoughts that feed into loneliness, making the condition worse and eroding a person's self-esteem. The U.S. Surgeon General's advisory report found that loneliness increases the risk of premature death by 26% and isolation by 29%. Murthy said, in terms of your lifespan, continuing to live in loneliness is equivalent to smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. Feeling lonely also increases a person's risk of heart disease by 29% and the risk of a stroke by 32%, according to the American Heart Association. What is remarkable is how pervasive loneliness is. 1 in 2 adults in the U.S. are living with measurable levels of loneliness. It's a broader swath of the population than the number of people with diabetes. Building social connections in our life has to be a vital priority. Researchers are still learning why loneliness causes negative health outcomes, but they have a few working hypotheses. Loneliness could trigger stress hormones, which causes inflammation and dysregulates body functions. Feeling lonely could also cause people to adopt unhealthy lifestyle behaviors like poor diet, smoking, and substance abuse. Lonely people may also be less motivated to seek preventative care, adhere to medications, and practice self-care. Murthy said, "There are a lot of people struggling with loneliness, and it doesn't mean that you're broken or something is fundamentally wrong with you. On an individual level, there are things that people can practice that could prevent them from feeling lonely." He suggests taking 15 minutes a day to reach out to someone you care about. Look for ways to serve others and make the time count by giving other people your full attention and putting your devices away. Institutions, including schools, employers, and healthcare systems, should also proactively adopt public health strategies to head off loneliness at the pass. Providers can practice social prescribing, a concept that's already embraced by the UK. Doctors screen for loneliness as they would for depression and anxiety and guide patients to community-based organizations that have partnered with healthcare facilities to address it. Beyond the health sector, the U.S. Surgeon General said public health leaders can also take a critical look at the infrastructure in local communities and digital environments to spread awareness and help build cultures of connection. Tackling the nation's loneliness epidemic will require that all sectors of society work together with a common goal. I love identifying a problem, but then I like to take action. Big problems that are affecting the world or the U.S. or your state and your community are also affecting you, which means they're also affecting those right around you. So never feel like you're too small or insignificant to make real change. People are more lonely than ever. We just heard all the statistics. So what can we do about it? Little old me, how can I make a difference in this big O problem? Well, I can connect. I can connect with the person next to me. I can connect with the next person I see at the store. I can reach out to someone I haven't talked to in a long time. I can look at making a new connection at work, at my church, anywhere in the community. Stop and ask someone if they need help. What about planned social activities? Organize gatherings, events, or outings that encourage face-to-face interaction. This could be dinners, maybe game night, or something outdoor. How about join some clubs or groups based on some of your interests? This provides opportunities to meet like-minded individuals and engage in shared activities. Volunteerism is amazing. Your big heart meets another big heart, and there you go. You could also attend local events. This could be festivals or workshops. It's a great way to meet new people and engage in new conversations. In order to make any of it happen, you're gonna have to limit your screen time. Reduce the amount of time you spend on digital devices. This can free up way more in-person, face-to-face interactions. Prioritize these types of connections. Choose face-to-face communication over digital methods like texting or emailing. Need to catch up? Ask for a coffee catch-up meeting instead of texting a long, unemotional text. Be present. When interacting with other people, be fully present and engaged in the conversation. Put away all of your distractions. Tell yourself before you go in it. Focus. The best way to activate your active listening is as you're listening to someone, Draw a picture in your mind of what they're saying, not what you're getting ready to say next. Seek out new experiences. Don't be afraid to try new activities or hobbies that involve interacting with other people, like even a sports team. The point is, if you're feeling lonely, you have endless options at your disposal. And if you see someone else, don't think that they're just busy and that's the reason they're looking down. Engage with them, encourage them, invest a little time for a new connection. At bigthink.com, I found out why Americans more than ever have no friends. So here are 5 steps to make more friends. Humans evolved to live in small groups, not just with blood-related kin, but with friends. Friends work together to secure resources, seek justice, and protect each other. The more cooperative and supportive the group was, the more likely it was to survive and pass on its bond-seeking genes. The result is that we are wired to want close, enduring friendships. Modern living is tough on friendship. Unlike our ancestors who knew everyone in their tribe, most people now live in cities where the default is anonymity. As children and young adults, school may provide a social community. Indeed, the number of friends people have peaks around age 25, but then substantially drops off around age 30 when work and the nuclear family takes over. Americans, especially those who are highly educated and high earning, work longer hours and are more likely to move for work than ever before. Parents also spend twice as much time with their children than previous generations. This saps the ability to maintain close friendships. The last decade has seen a startling further fall in the number of quality of friendships. First, we have fewer close friends. According to the May 2021 American Perspective Survey, over 2,000 adults, 12% of Americans reported having no friends, up from under 3% in the 1990s. This data is mirrored in the United Kingdom, where the number of young adults who report having only one or no close friends jumped from 7% to nearly 20% between 2012 and 2021. These numbers are even worse for men, who tend to have more friends early in life, but experience a steeper decline. Second, we're spending substantially less time with the few friends we have. The American Time Use Survey, started in 2003, found that prior to 2013, people spent just under 7 hours per week with friends, and around 15 hours when including family members, neighbors, and coworkers outside of work. But in 2014, people began reporting less social time. By 2021, the amount had nearly halved. We're now spending less than 3 hours per week with close friends and 10 hours with all companions. It's not surprising, therefore, that even before the COVID pandemic lockdown, loneliness rates were increasing. One study found that as of 2019, around 20% of Americans reported feeling lonely, and COVID made all these trends worse. The recent meta-analysis for over 30 studies and 28,000 older adults found that nearly 30% felt lonely. Though friends may not help hunt mammoths or fight off attacking tribes anymore, they continue to support our economic success, well-being, and survival. People without good friends die younger. A meta-analysis of 70 independent studies found that feeling socially isolated and lonely reduce longevity as much as severe obesity or smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Being alone causes obstacles to look more daunting, literally. One line of studies, for example, found that people assess hills as more steep when they're alone compared to when they're with a friend. When real-life obstacles hit, lacking friends may mean you don't have a ride to the doctor's office or an advocate or a shoulder to cry on. Being lonely just feels bad. When around friends, your brain releases feel-good neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. When you feel lonely, your brain pays more attention to negative things like social threats and rejection. Feeling socially excluded activates the same brain regions involved in physical pain. In fact, loneliness predicts pain, fatigue, and depression. So, here's the 101 of making friends. Science has yet to develop a step-by-step guide to making friends, but it does have some good suggestions. First, don't get overwhelmed by thinking that you need dozens of close friends. Around 3 is probably enough to buffer against stress and improve well-being, and some psychologists suggest that around 5 is the limit for shoulder-to-cry-on closeness. Second, realize that making friends will take multiple interactions over time. Unlike family relatives, developing and maintaining friendships requires sustained contact. One famous study found that a top predicator of friendship formation was merely how close people lived together, and by extension, how often they saw each other, regardless of shared interests or other personal factors. Another recent study estimates that at least 11 interactions over 5 months are needed to solidify a friendship. Third, because repeated contact is important, consider joining an organization or activity that meets regularly. Religious attendance and volunteer work, for example, have been shown to improve well-being, in part because they facilitate social connections. Fourth, given that this will be a commitment, be a thoughtful shopper. Focus on people you really connect with. We are drawn to people like ourselves, that is, those who are of similar education level, age, and occupation, and with whom we have shared interests. But don't rule out getting to know people outside of your typical social circle. A study of Chinese adolescents, for example, found that making friends from different neighborhoods boosted well-being, especially for men. Finally, as you spend your time together, sprinkle in some self-disclosure. Sharing information about your experiences, thoughts, and beliefs boost perceived empathy and warmth. In turn, this leads potential friends to share more about themselves and to like you more. Just don't overdo it. Disclosing highly intimate information early on or consistently referencing yourself can backfire. If you're among the millions of adults suffering from a personal friendship recession, don't fret. There are likely many others also in need of a good friend, and with some effort, you can find each other. In the meantime, don't forget to enjoy your weak ties too. Social interactions with mere acquaintances or even strangers, say chatting with coworkers at a meeting or random passengers on a bus, can have a surprisingly large positive impact on our well-being. Hey, if I have to leave you with anything, it would be a wise word I heard related to this topic. Just show up. No excuses. No overthinking it, no talking yourself out of it. Just show up. If you want to share encouragementology with a friend who needs to know they're not alone in this journey of self-discovery, you can visit encouragementology.com or anywhere you stream your content to receive this episode and all others. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for additional encouragement throughout the week. So I challenge you, don't take the easy way out and live your life on the periphery. Step up, reach out, and nurture human connection. It's the fastest declining commodity. Take the time and invest to reap the greatest rewards life has to offer. I know you can do it. Thank you for listening to Encouragementology with Kendall Boyson, where we find positive ways to handle some of life's challenges.
I stumbled through until the path was clear. That's when